Chris Lee and Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14 here. We preview every single SEC game every week. And in this instance, we're going to be talking about South Carolina and its visit to Vanderbilt. That one, 6:30 Central. You can watch it on the SEC Network, or if you're in the Nashville area like we are, you can just go watch it in person. Tickets probably will be plenty and probably not that expensive. Anyway, Blake, Vanderbilt had an off week after a near miss at Missouri that looks a little better after Missouri went into Columbia and just, uh, for lack of a better way to put it, tarred and feathered the Gamecocks for most of the night. Um, Carolina could not move the ball at all. Missouri did move the ball a lot in the first half, which is rare, and just came in and stomped the Gamecocks, who had been really, really hot right up until that.
Yeah, South Carolina 203 total yards in that game. I mean, that's again, we talk about in the Missouri Kentucky video, Missouri's defense. I mean, it has been something to behold at times. And when you only get 32 yards rushing, think about that, Chris. We talked about how big of a season Lloyd has had and kind of the playmaker he can be, but it's just like they just could not get anything going. And obviously, the passing game has been up and down, and this was just one of those where you come in riding high, top 25 team, and man, you just kind of get smacked in the mouth a little bit in terms of going up against that Missouri defense. The good news for South Carolina, I don't think Vanderbilt's defense is Missouri's defense,
Ooh.
and that could certainly present the South Carolina offense with an opportunity to get back on track this week against the Commodores, who have allowed a lot of yards, a lot of points, and that certainly makes for an interesting setup here. But I guess you do wonder kind of what the mindset is of the South Carolina team coming off of just kind of a very underwhelming performance, given that they had kind of gotten back on track, top 25 team, and then to lose that game to a Missouri team that had won, only beaten Vanderbilt to that point. Definitely deflating a little bit for the Gamecocks.
Okay. Um, Vanderbilt's defense looks a lot like the one the year before, last year, the year before that, and the year before that, which is not good. It's giving up 36.6 a game. That said, it did seem to find a little something against Missouri. Carolina is averaging 30.2 points a game, actually 30.3 to be exact. But a lot of that's been done by defense and special teams and field position. That offense is not good. Spencer Rattler right now, I cannot think of a quarterback I'd less rather have running my team than him in the SEC. Uh, the Gamecocks right now, and these numbers are adjusted for sacks. Carolina is averaging 4.7 per rush play. Vanderbilt giving up 4.8. Carolina averaging 6.5 yards per pass play. Vanderbilt giving up a whopping 8.4, which is the worst in the league. Again, that's different than yards per attempt because this factors in sacks, and that takes the edge off a pretty ugly number, which is still pretty ugly. Carolina is pretty balanced. Runs it about 30 times a game and passes it about 33, 32. You want to be able to throw the ball against Vandy. That's the best way to really burn that defense. But man, I just don't know that you want Spencer Rattler putting the ball. I mean, this is that like the movable force against the whatever object. But both teams are just awful when the ball's in the air, and I don't know what happens here.
Well, and that's the thing too. We talked about Lloyd a minute ago, obviously not being able to get going. Part of that was due to the injury, of course. Was it a quad? I think Beamer said that it was like a, what did he label it as? Significant bruise. That was the
Mm.
note here I have in my quote from what he, or excuse me, opposite of that quote in my note that he mentioned after the game. So I guess again we're talking about this on Sunday. That will be something to monitor too, and I think that played a role. As we mentioned earlier, in their just inability to get anything going against Missouri. So I still think, I feel like I say this all the time, but for South Carolina, I think the formula for success is certainly getting him involved as much as you possibly can. Now, if he's not out there, that's another thing, right? Like that evens the playing field a little bit more if you don't have your best playmaker out there on the field. And again, we're just going to assume he plays at this point because it doesn't sound like it's going to be anything that's going to hold him out. So if he is on the field, he better get a lot of touches. I think that's clearly the key to their success because, like you mentioned, Rattler, the numbers are what they are, right? I mean, we that's all we have to go off of, and the numbers have just been so up and down that it's just hard to rely on that passing attack. But as I said as well earlier, yes, maybe Vanderbilt finds a little bit of that against the Missouri team that honestly, Chris, if you compare offenses right now, South Carolina, Missouri, are they that far apart in terms of where they are offensively? So, I mean, so that if you're looking at it from Vanderbilt's standpoint, it's like, I don't know how much more intimidated you are, maybe, just in that scenario. So, yeah, it's one where despite Vanderbilt's defense, the yardage and all that we said that they've given up, um, it's not like South Carolina's offense has been perfect by any means at this point. So,
Before we talk about the other side of the ball, we got a lot of big games coming up in the SEC. To add some excitement, we're making some predictions on games in the Stakes app. We want to see if you guys like our picks or don't. So go to playwithstakes.com. That is STAKES /14. Sign up for Stakes, place your predictions, whether you like our predictions or you don't. If you use the invite code Southeastern14 when you sign up, you'll get a double welcome bonus. Free to play, free to make your predictions. You can win stuff. What's not to like? Go have some fun at Stakes and help out the folks who help us out. Okay, when Vanderbilt's got the ball, sounds like A.J. Swan, their quarterback, is going to be back from a concussion. Really has not thrown the ball very well lately. Got removed from that game at Missouri, I think, early third quarter. Vanderbilt is averaging 26.6 yards a game. That has taken a huge hit the last month. Carolina giving up 24.6. Carolina has picked off 9 passes. Vanderbilt's intercepted 4. Carolina's recovered 2 fumbles. Vandy has lost 7. Sacks, Carolina's got 11. I think half those came against Kentucky pretty much. Vanderbilt's given up 8. If you count rush plays and pass plays, in other words, adjusted for sacks, Carolina's averaging 4.6 a carry, Vanderbilt giving up 4.5. And Carolina is giving up 6.1 yards a pass play, Vanderbilt averaging 6.2. But I'll tell you what was problematic. Cam Smith had some issues with Dominic Lovett. Cam Smith's a first-team All-SEC, maybe All-American corner, probably the best player on that team. To see the Gamecocks spring a leak a bit there against a Missouri team that's one of the 2 or 3 worst passing teams in the league, in my opinion, that was a little bit alarming. I think it's probably a one-off, but I think it's maybe worth a mention here, given it's a little bit fresh.
yeah, I'm just curious to see, how much this Vanderbilt offense can challenge South Carolina because, like you said, I mean, a lot of that I think is dependent on Swan, and you said you expect him to be back and ready to go for this one. And as we talked about before, their passing game's better whenever he's on the field. And, that would give them a chance to kind of challenge the South Carolina defense a little bit. And, Will Shepherd, obviously, we know what he's capable of and those kind of things. You know, and I mean, I think this is one where, to me, for Vanderbilt, like you said, I mean, South Carolina's been pretty good against the pass overall, but you did kind of see what they gave up against Love at 10 receptions, 148 yards in that game. I mean, that's what it's going to take, right, from Vanderbilt's offense. They've got to get somebody that can make those kind of big plays, and we know that they have a guy that can do that, and perhaps more than one. But I just think it's still one of those where overall, I think the South Carolina defense, there's been a lot of good things you can kind of lean on. And Chris, to me, and this kind of goes back to the other side of the ball too, but this feels like a game of turnovers in terms of like, I feel
Mm-hmm.
like this is such an important part of this. And I know I'm going back to the other side of the ball for a second, but we've talked about it before, right? If you're South Carolina, um, I think they're now tied for last in the nation in terms of turnovers lost. And so, I mean, that's with Northwestern, Southern Miss, Utah State, and Virginia here at 19. And so for me, for Vanderbilt, like this is such a big part of it is if you're going to have a chance to win this game, I think you can't turn the ball over. You've just got to kind of put yourself in a position where you can kind of work your offense a bit. And for me, that all comes down to if AJ Swan's back 100% ready to go, then they could do some things against the South Carolina defense, perhaps.
Okay, some other things to consider before I go to you for trends and stuff like that. Carolina getting penalized 54 yards a game, Vanderbilt 44. That's been a pretty disciplined team. Carolina, coming into the game this weekend, had the number one special teams in the country, according to the guys at Fernal Efficiency Index. Vanderbilt 40 on special teams, which is very respectable. Carolina has, I don't know, blocked 5 or 6 kicks, returned a couple for touchdowns. I mean, they are a nightmare to deal with in special teams. Strength of schedule, Carolina at 47, according to Jeff Sager, and Vandy at 20. I've actually seen Vanderbilt with the toughest strength of schedule over at ESPN's FPI. The strength of schedule numbers kind of bounce all over depending on who you consult. All right, give me some stuff. I know that Carolina has just dominated this series. I think it's won 14, 15 in a row, and I don't know that that's a small deal here.
Yeah, we always leave these little stats from covers for our betting friends out there. If you're betting on these games, which, as we always say, we are not professional bettors, but if you are someone who wants to bet on these games, these are some kind of fun stats we always look at. The over 10-2 in South Carolina's last 12 road games. So that's something to kind of look at there. For Vanderbilt, they're 8-1 against the spread in their last 9 games in November, Chris. So Clark Lee, perhaps a November coach. Well, part of that is the Clark Lee era. So that's something to kind of think about when you look at it there too. In the head-to-head, as you mentioned, South Carolina 5-1-1 against the spread last 7 games between these two teams. So those are kind of some little nuggets there. Chris, I'm going to be honest with you. Until I see Vanderbilt win an SEC game at this point, given what the streak is at, I just find it hard to pick them. I think what we saw from South Carolina last week against Missouri gives you maybe a little more optimism that Vanderbilt can find a path here to victory, but I just still think that this is one where, maybe Shane Beamer certainly got his team's attention after that game last week.
Yeah.
And I think South Carolina probably makes enough plays to win this game here.
Oh, okay. I think I'm with you. My hesitation is that Rattler has just been so bad. He's just a turnover waiting to happen. And Vanderbilt shut down Missouri in the second half because it got some pressure. It started throwing some blitz packages and things out there that I don't think it had used. But, now that that's on film, it's a little easier to prepare for. Carolina is vulnerable to giving up some sacks. One other thing, we mentioned how Cam Smith struggled a bit last week. Missouri really shut down Will Shepherd. And that's kind of the key to stopping Vandy. Shepherd's got 8 or 9 touchdowns this year. He can make huge plays. I think that Smith will probably be able to handle him. The thing I like, and this went against me last week, I had said I thought Missouri and Carolina was basically a toss-up last week. And I picked Carolina because, A, it was at home, and B, I just felt like that's a team that knows how to win. Statistically, it did not look like a 5-2 team, but it was 5-2 because it was making big plays when it needed to. Carolina just always finds a way in this series. I could see a blocked punt, getting rung back for a score, something like that. I'm with you, but here's some interesting stuff here. The line in the over-under puts this at 29-22 in Carolina's favor. Now, if you're looking at an over-under based on the points scored and the points allowed by these teams, it's 59. The Vegas number that I'm seeing is 50.5. So it looks to me like the under or the over might be the value here if you're looking for that. And that's kind of the way that I feel. I have no feel on this game in terms of who covers. I feel like Carolina's going to win. It would not astonish me if Vanderbilt did, but I'm with you. I feel like I kind of need to see it before I can pick it. Anyway, Carolina to win. I think the over hits here, and other than that, I'm out of ideas.
Yeah, our confidence level tells you why we're not professional bettors. So there you go.
Right. And yeah, anyway, we are previewing every single SEC game this year. Best way to catch those is to hit that subscribe button. We do a Wednesday Night Live show. We're doing a ton of basketball stuff we're coming out with too. So if you like hoops, you'll love our channel too. Anyway, I'm Chris Lee. He's Blake Lovell. Again, we will preview every single SEC game this week. We'll see you soon with the next one.